And we'll get this going here, where you can see it a little better than I can too.
Why?
Hmm?
Oh,
Oh, yeah. I'm getting old and can't see this one. Come on. We are, of course, in Genesis chapter 19 is going to be the main point here.
Génesis capítulo 19.
But before that, we're going to get into Genesis 8
Oh,
a little bit. Let me begin by expressing to you, Jim, my appreciation for your stepping in last week while I was away. It is nice to know that there is someone who can take over, cover it when you need assistance.
permíteme comenzar expresándote, Jim, mi agradecimiento por haber intervenido la semana pasada mientras yo estaba fuera. Es bueno saber que hay alguien que puede cubrirlo cuando surja la necesidad.
Most act up tonight. I also appreciate you, Steve, for switching around with me with the Devo.
También te agradezco, Steve, por cambiar conmigo para la versión.
Now to our class. Jim said he got down through verse 15 of chapter 18.
Ahora nuestra clase, Jim dijo que llegó hasta el versículo 15 del capítulo 18.
We are going to begin with verse 16 and use the remainder of this chapter as an introduction to chapter 19.
Comenzaremos con el versículo 16 y usaremos el resto de este capítulo como introducción al capítulo 19.
In Genesis chapter 18, verses 16 through 19,
en Génesis capítulo 18, versículo 16 al 19,
read, and the men rose up from thence and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do, seeing that Abraham will surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I know him that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him.
Y los varones se levantaron de ahí y miraron hacia Sodoma, y Abraham iba con ellos acompañándolos. Y Jehová dijo, ¿encubriré yo a Abraham lo que voy a hacer? Habiendo de ser Abraham una nación grande y fuerte, y habiendo de ser benditas en él todas las naciones de la tierra, porque yo sé que mandará a sus hijos y a su casa después de sí, que guarden el camino de Jehová, haciendo justicia y juicio, para que haga venir Jehová sobre Abraham lo que ha hablado acerca de él.
Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do?
¿Ocultaré a Abraham lo que hago?
Look at what he says about Abraham.
Mire lo que dice acerca de Abraham.
Become a great nation, verse 18.
Conviértete en una gran nación, verso 18.
All nations blessed, verse 18.
Bendita todas las naciones, verso 18.
And notice verse 19. And
note el verso 19.
For I know him that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him.
Verso 19, porque yo sé que mandará a sus hijos y a su casa después de sí, que guarden el camino de Jehová, haciendo justicia y juicio, para que haga venir Jehová sobre Abraham lo que ha hablado acerca de él.
God is going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah and the other cities, verses 20 through 22.
Dios va a destruir a Sodoma y Gomorra y las demás ciudades. Versos 20 y 22.
And the Lord said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous, I will go down now and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it which is come unto me, and if not, I will know. And the men turned their faces from thence and went towards Sodom, but Abraham stood yet before the Lord.
Verso 20 al 22. Entonces Jehová le dijo, por cuanto el clamor contra Sodoma y Gomorra se aumenta más y más, y el pecado de ellos se ha agravado en extremo, descenderé ahora y veré si han consumado su obra según el clamor que ha venido hasta mí, y si no, lo sabré. Y se apartaron de ahí los varones y fueron hacia Sodoma, pero Abraham estaba aún delante de Jehová.
Abraham bargains with God, chapter 18, verses 23 and following. He intercedes to God for the cities.
Abraham negocia con Dios, capítulo 18, verso 23.
For some reason it doesn't have that. Starts with 50 and pleads all the way down to 10.
Comienza con 50 y llega hasta 10.
Interesting that they could not even find 10.
Interesante que no pudieron encontrar ni 10.
I don't know the size of these cities, but it is safe to say that the condition of the cities was terrible. As we will see in chapter 19, they were very wicked.
No sé el tamaño de estas ciudades, pero es seguro decir que su condición era terrible, como veremos en el capítulo 19, fueron muy malvados.
Now we get into chapter 19.
Vamos al capítulo 19.
In Genesis chapter 19 and verse 1, we read, And there came two angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom. And Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground.
En el capítulo 19, versículo 1, leemos, Llegaron pues los dos ángeles a Sodoma a la caída de la tarde, y Lot estaba sentado a la puerta de Sodoma. Y viéndolos Lot se levantó a recibirlos y se inclinó hacia el suelo.
Are these the two individuals we see in chapter 18? It seems that the answer is yes. Genesis chapter 18 and verse 16.
¿Son estos dos de los individuos que vemos en el capítulo 18? Parece que la respuesta es sí. Génesis capítulo 18, versículo 16.
And we read there, And the men rose up from thence and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on their way.
Y los varones se levantaron de ahí y miraron hacia Sodoma, y Abraham iba con ellos acompañándolos.
Lot is sitting in the gate.
Lot está sentado a la puerta.
This could indicate that Lot is a respected member of the community, as the elders, rulers would sit in the gate.
Esto indicaría que Lot es un miembro respetado de la comunidad, ya que los ancianos gobernantes se sentaban en la puerta.
Though we will later see that the people don't exactly like him.
Aunque más tarde veremos que a la gente no le agrada exactamente.
In Genesis chapter 19,
en Génesis capítulo 19,
in verses 2 and 3, we read, And he said, Behold, now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet, and ye shall rise up early, and go on your ways. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street all night. And he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in unto him, and entered into his house, and he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat.
Génesis capítulo 19, versículos 2 y 3. Y dijo, ahora mis señores, os ruego que vengáis a casa de vuestro siervo, y os hospedéis y lavaréis vuestros pies, y por la mañana os levantaréis, y seguiréis vuestro camino. Y ellos respondieron, no, que en la calle nos quedaremos esta noche. Mas él porfió con ellos, y fueron con él, y entraron en su casa, y les hizo banquete, y coció panes sin levadura, y comieron.
He invites them into his house, and in fact pleads with them in verse 3.
Los invita a su casa, les ruega en el versículo 3.
Why?
¿Por qué?
Hospitality for one,
Hospitalidad para uno.
but is he trying to protect them from the people?
Pero está intentando protegerlos del pueblo.
In Genesis chapter 19, verses 4 through 9,
Génesis capítulo 19, versículo 4 al 9.
we read there, but before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot, and said unto him, Where are the men which came in to thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them. And Lot went out at the door unto them, and shut the door after him, and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Behold, now I have two daughters which have not known men. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do ye to them as it is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing. For therefore came they under the shadow of my roof, and they said, Stand back. And they said again, This one fellow came in to sojourn, and he will needs be a judge. Now we will deal worse with thee than with them. And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot, and came near to break the door.
49.
Mm-hmm.
Versículo 4 al 9. Pero antes que se acostasen, rodearon la casa los hombres de la ciudad, los varones de Sodoma, todo el pueblo junto, desde el más joven hasta el más viejo, y llamaron a Lot y le dijeron, ¿dónde están los varones que vinieron a ti esta noche? Sácalos para que los conozcamos. Entonces Lot salió a ellos y se cerró a la puerta tras sí, y dijo, os ruego, hermanos míos, que no hagáis tal maldad. He aquí ahora yo tengo dos hijas que no han conocido varón, os las sacaré fuera, y haced de ellas como bien os pareciere, solamente que a estos varones no hagáis nada, pues que vinieron a la sombra de mi tejado. Y ellos respondieron, quita allá, y añadieron, vino este extraño para habitar entre nosotros, y habrá de erigirse en juez. Ahora te haremos más mal que a ellos. Y hacían gran violencia al varón a Lot, y se acercaron para romper la puerta.
Clearly, there is reason to fear the conduct of those of the city. They are wanting to know these two in a sexual way.
Es evidente que hay motivos para temer la conducta de los de la ciudad. Están queriendo conocer a estos dos de forma sexual.
Even going to the point of raping them.
Incluso llegando al punto de violarlas.
Though, let's be clear, the problem here is not solely that of rape. Clearly, their sin includes that of homosexuality.
Aunque seamos claros, el problema aquí no es únicamente el de la violación. Claramente su pecado incluye el de la homosexualidad.
Lot's solution is to give his daughters to them.
La solución de Lot es entregarles a sus hijas.
Hijas, that should be, but We must be clear that God does not condone this decision. It is Lot's solution to it. It is Lot's solution, and it was sinful.
Debemos tener claro que Dios no aprueba esta decisión, fue la solución de Lot y también fue pecaminosa.
Man often causes problems by trying to solve some other problem.
El hombre muchas veces causa problemas al tratar de resolver algún otro problema.
Genesis chapter 19, verses 10 and 11.
Génesis capítulo 19, versículos 10 al 11.
But the men put forth their hand and pulled Lot into the house to them and shut the door. And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door.
Entonces los varones alargaron la mano y metieron a Lot en casa con ellos y cerraron la puerta. Y a los hombres que estaban a la puerta de la casa hicieron con ceguera desde el menor hasta el mayor, de manera que se fatigaban buscando la puerta.
These angels, men, were not in any danger. They, in fact, saved Lot.
Estos ángulos hombres no corrían ningún peligro, salvaron a Lot.
And
ángeles.
Well, in Genesis 18,
Yeah.
it referred to them as angels, and here it calls them men. In Genesis 19, 12 through 14,
Génesis capítulo 19, versos 12 al 14.
and the men said unto Lot, Hast thou here any besides? Son-in-law, and thy sons, and thy daughters, and whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of the place. For we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxen great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord hath sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, Up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law.
Y dijeron los varones a Lot, ¿tienes aquí alguno más? Yernos y tus hijos y tus hijas y todo lo que tienes en la ciudad, sácalo de este lugar, porque vamos a destruir este lugar por cuanto el clamor contra ellos ha subido de punto delante de Jehová. Por tanto Jehová nos ha enviado para destruirlo. Entonces salió Lot y habló a sus yernos, los que habían de tomar sus hijas, y les dijo, levantaos, salid de este lugar, porque Jehová va a destruir esta ciudad. Mas pareció a sus yernos como que se burlaban.
Lot is told to gather his family and leave.
A Lot se le dice que se reúna a su familia y se vaya.
Some disagreement as to whether Lot had other children who were left behind.
Cierto desacuerdo sobre si Lot tuvo otros hijos que quedaron atrás.
Quote, sons-in-law, some think this evidence that he had other daughters who were already married.
Yernos, algunos piensan que esto evidencia que tenían otras hijas que ya estaban casadas.
Others point out that in this society, if the daughters were engaged, they would already be viewed as, quote, married.
Otros señalan que en esta sociedad, si las hijas estuvieran comprometidas, ya serían vistas como casadas.
I believe that this is evidence Lot had other children and some stayed behind.
Creo que esto es evidencia de que Lot tuvo otros hijos y algunos se quedaron atrás.
Notice in verses 15 through 17.
Noten los versículos 15 y 17.
And when the morning arose, then the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and thy two daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. And when he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his two daughters, the Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought him forth and set him without the city. And it came to pass, when they had brought them forth abroad, that he said, Escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain, escape to the mountains, lest thou be consumed.
Verso 15 al 17. Y al rayar el alba los ángeles daban prisa a Lot diciendo, levántate, toma tu mujer y tus 2 hijas que se hallan aquí, para que no perezcas en el castigo de la ciudad. Y deteniéndose él, los varones asieron de su mano y de la mano de su mujer y de la mano de sus 2 hijas, según la misericordia de Jehová para con él, y lo sacaron y lo pusieron fuera de la ciudad. Y cuando los hubieron llevado fuera, dijeron, escapa por tu vida, no mires tras ti, ni pares en toda esta llanura, escapa al monte, no sea que perezcas.
Again, notice in verses 15 through 17, they drag Lot out.
Noten en los versículos 15 y 17 arrastran a Lot.
In verses 18 through 20, Lot pleads to go to Zoar. He doesn't actually go.
En los versículos 18 al 20, Lot ruega que vaya a Zoar. En realidad no va.
Lot's wife looks back, verse 26.
La esposa de Lot mira hacia atrás, verso 26.
The idea here is she was longing to go back, not that she simply turned her head and looked in that direction.
La idea aquí es que ella desea regresar, no que simplemente giró la cabeza y miró en esa dirección.
Genesis 19, verses 24 through 29, God destroys these 4 cities, but he remembers Abraham and Lot.
Génesis capítulo 19, 24 al 29, Dios destruye estas 4 ciudades, pero se acuerda de Abraham y de Lot.
When we consider how fertile this land was, Lot chose the land because it was fertile. It is clear just how complete this destruction is. It is certainly not fertile today.
Cuando consideramos cuán fértil era esta tierra antes de esto, recuerde que Lot miró y eligió esta tierra porque era fértil. Queda claro cuán completa de esta destrucción ciertamente hoy no es fértil.
In Genesis 19, 30 through 38, Lot's daughters decide they were the only people left, and they decided to have children through incest. They will have children with their father.
En Génesis capítulo 19, versículo 30 al 38, la hija de Lot decidió que eran las únicas personas que quedaban y decidieron tener hijos mediante incesto. Tendrán hijos con su padre.
Again, consider how wicked man can be with his quote-unquote solutions to things.
De nuevo, considere cuán malvado puede ser el hombre con sus soluciones a las cosas.
Again, thank you for your attention.
Nuevamente, gracias por su atención.
Does anyone have any questions or
¿Alguien
comments?
tiene alguna pregunta o comentario?
I jump at one. Jim, nothing to comment on? Question? No questions or comments?
I'm not sure.
Steve or John, I mean?
Sorry. But doesn't it, I want to say it's a little big, yes, but I'm not sure. But doesn't God tell them not to give your daughter as prostitutes? Is that kind of what Lot did?
Well, yes, the Bible does teach. I don't remember the exact text. I believe actually in Leviticus, but I would have to go back and look at the exact verse, find the exact passage. But I don't know if I'd say that's his intent of giving them as such. He's certainly not treating them as I would treat my child. His answer, and I know, and some people try to I think make a little more of this than they should. Certainly, if it's Lot's intent is that to do that, he indicates it is his idea that he had invited these people into his home, and in that society, they're his guest, and that is very big deal then. So if so he doesn't want anything to happen to them, and he will go to the extreme, even of giving his two virgin daughters to them to do with as they want. So I think some people make a bigger deal out of that in the sense that I don't know that they're necessarily trying to justify his doing so. I don't think that would be the case, that they would be trying to do that. But the point is, his solution is not really a solution. His idea of, here it is, you can't have these two guys here. They're my guests, but here's my daughters. Take them and do what you want. Certainly that is not okay. And again, some people will, in an attempt to attack the Bible, will go back and say, well, see there. God was happy with his doing so. It was not appropriate for him to do so. Steve, you got to.
I was just going to say, sometimes when we look at things like that, we try to compare everything to Western culture.
Mm-hmm.
We have no idea what the third world country or the East is like. And, just being in villages and visiting people from Africa, you come to their house, buddy, they are there to take care of you. It's their responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And here, somebody comes into our house, basically just nonchalant visit or something. Over there, he's responsible for their lives.
Mm-hmm. And certainly there's no taking away from that. But again, I would argue that
we can argue.
It still doesn't. Oh, see, it still doesn't justify Lot's actions. The solution, give your daughters up.
Well, obviously, God took care of the situation.
Yes, and as we noted
he didn't have to follow through, but at least.
And as I noted, these men, angels, were never in any danger. These heathen, and I'm not calling all y'all heathen, by the way. These heathen were, they weren't going to do any harm to these two individuals. As a matter of fact, now Lot doesn't understand that, I concede, but they weren't in any danger. They, in fact, had to what? They had to save Lot from the mob.
Like you said, Lot didn't know that.
No, Lot didn't know that. And so, in the end, and you're right, God ends up taking care of it. But I would submit that, and again, I would point out, I don't believe God was pleased with Lot's solution to this.
Took care of it for him.
Well, no, and yeah, he takes care of it and ultimately destroys these cities. We often talk about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and I do want us to realize there were actually more than just those two cities. There were 5 originally named, but he saved Zoar because Lot said, it's just a small little city. Let me go there. And then what does Lot do? Lot runs away and hides in the mountains or the hills or whatever it is. Anybody else? Hermanos?
Well, one thing.
Steve?
He said that his wife didn't actually physically look back.
Oh, I didn't. No, I'm not saying.
What
I'm not saying she didn't look back. I'm saying that the point isn't that she just turned and looked. She looked back, but she was looking back, wanting to go back. So if I gave the impression that she didn't actually turn her head and look, that's not what I was trying to say. I was just saying that the fact that she turned and looked back was not the only thing. She looked back because she wanted to go back to that life. She wanted to go back there.
I think it's also seeing the fact that they had to take him by the hand to bring him out.
And they had to drag him out.
Well, I didn't want to leave either.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's,
I mean, we don't know for sure. Her and Lot, I kind of wonder if they didn't want their other kids, if they had other kids, to come, so they were kind of lingering, hoping they changed their mind, but they didn't. Then when she turned back, she's like, oh, I miss them and all that.
Well, and there may be some of that as well. Interesting is Josephus actually says that in his day, and of course this is the first century, of course she got turned into the pillar of salt, it says, and Josephus actually says you could go and see that pillar of salt. It was still there in his day. But anyway, it is actually past time for us to stop, so we're going to conclude there.